Hey everyone, welcome back to Fox Tech. It's been 5 years since I last owned an iPad. Here I am in 2020 with an iPad Pro, and I've been using it for 2 months now, and I'm here to see if Apple were right when they said, your next computer is not a computer. Here's my full review of the 2020 iPad Pro. I hadn't used an iPad for years because iPads to me became more of a media consumption device rather than anything else, and that was due to the limitations of iOS on iPads, and I didn't use it. I wasn't traveling around as much, I didn't watch as much on my iPad as I used to, so it was just gathering dust. I passed it down to my parents and I didn't regret it. 5 years later, and with the improvements in iPadOS, I went big. I picked up the 2020 iPad Pro with Magic Keyboard, Apple Pencil and 256GB of storage. And the question is, can it replace a laptop? Can it be your one device? Should you buy one? And should you get it over the 2018 model? Let's find out. The differences between the 2020 and the 2018 iPad Pro and that the 2020 has 6GB of RAM on all models, a higher base storage of 128GB compared to 64GB, an additional ultra-wide camera and a LiDAR scanner, the price due to the reduction in price of the 2018 models, and it has the A12Z Bionic chip, or A12Z if you're American, but A12Z Bionic chip, which is basically the same as the 2018 iPad Pro with 1 GPU core extra unlocked. So it's a powerful device, but we're going to see if it can do everything that Apple say it can do. The general design of the 2020 iPad Pro is basically identical to that of the 2018 iPad Pro. The major differences are the camera layout with 1 extra sensor and a LiDAR scanner, but other than that, flat back and flat glass display, flat edges, flat top and bottom with the curves in the corners. It's not a bad thing though. It's not a bad thing that it's similar, because I think this looks really good, really sleek, really premium, and I like it. All the ports are the same, meaning yes, that singular USB-C port at the bottom, but that's much better than Lightning. And the speakers are all in the same place, power buttons are in the same place, as well as the volume rocker. The display of the iPad is awesome. It's the same one that's in the 2018 model, again, same. Apple call it their liquid retina display. There you go, their marketing terms. It's an LCD display with a resolution of 2732 by 2048 on the 12.9 inch model, and it's really good, it's really bright. It reaches a peak of 600 nits brightness, and it's got a PPI of 264, which yes, is smaller than most phones that we see now. Some phones have double the PPI of the iPad Pro, but at the distances that you use it at, it's more than enough, and it's a joy to use. The peak brightness of 600 nits could be better. Obviously the higher brightness we can get, the better, but that ProMotion display, it has 120Hz ProMotion, that sweet, sweet ProMotion display. It varies between 120Hz and 60Hz, and it can vary between what's on the screen, whether you're watching a video or whether you're browsing the web, and it is so smooth. Here you can see a comparison between scrolling on the 2020 iPad Pro and scrolling on the 2020 MacBook Air, and it just looks so smooth in comparison. This is in slow-mo, obviously, to help you see it, but in day-to-day use you will see a difference if you use them side by side. Scrolling around and using the 120Hz is incredible, and then when you drop down to a 60Hz laptop, the experience is not the same, and it feels so slow. Although yes, my MacBook might be getting on a bit, and it could be getting a bit old, who knows. It's not all great though. I was a little disappointed that the new iPad didn't come with a mini LED display, that it kept the same LCD display of the 2018 model. There were many rumours last year that the 2020 model would come with a mini LED display, which would have deeper blacks for an LED and better colours and better brightness and better battery life, all these things. But that didn't come. We've got the exact same display that's in the 2018 model. And yes, it's great. There's rumours that the 2021 model at the start of next year will have a mini LED display, which to be honest, I'm really looking forward to. So we'll see about that. As mentioned at the start, iOS on iPads was a huge limiting factor on what could be done on an iPad until the announcement of iPadOS at WWDC in 2019. Previously, there was no support for external storage devices, split screen view, a desktop browser, and mouse and trackpad support. Now though, with the improvements to iPadOS, it's brought across the possibility of doing all those things. With a dedicated Files app within iPad, you can plug in a storage device and manage your files through the Files app like you could on any other laptop or MacBook. Multitasking is now much easier on the iPad. It was never really there before, but now they've brought split view and slide view. You can now split screen by dragging another app from the dock and placing it alongside the current app that you have open, and then you can resize the windows and multitask with ease, then just swipe away when you're finished. A desktop version of Safari makes it much more like a MacBook, much easier to use. Then we get to mouse and trackpad support. Now this was added in iOS 13.4 a few months back, the trackpad support. I didn't think anything of it at first, I really didn't. I linked up my MX Master 2 mouse with it and had a little play around, and it was a bit finicky, the gestures weren't quite right, and I didn't really think anything of it. But I did order the Magic Keyboard, and this thing, it's just incredible. It just changes the iPad totally. I did a video on the Magic Keyboard if you want to check that out above, but basically this is unreal. The keyboard itself and the typing experience are amazing. The keys are backlit and they vary in brightness depending on what the ambient light sensor in the iPad sees. It's really a joy to type on. The little cursor that they've created for iPadOS, the little round circle, is quite fun and it's actually quite intuitive. At first I wasn't fond of it, but when you move it across different colors, it gets darker or lighter depending on what's in the background so you can see it. And also depending on what you're moving over, if it's something that you can click on, something that you can tap, whether you can highlight text, whether you can click an app, whether you can click a link, it kind of morphs into different shapes so that you can do those things easier. And I actually think it's very clever what they've done with regards to the trackpad and cursor support in iPadOS. And the Magic Trackpad is just the perfect companion for the iPad Pro. The Magic Keyboard is so easy to use, so useful. Snap the iPad off, snap it back on, really simple. It's got USB-C pass-through on one side so that you can charge through this port whilst using the other USB-C port for external storage or different devices. We'll get into that a bit later. And that's great for productivity. If you want to do different things with the USB-C port while you're charging, it's perfect for productivity. And if you saw my last video, it's built like a tank, an absolute tank. Look at that. It's just, you can hold it at the side, it doesn't move. It's incredible. I really like it. It's not all awesome though. There's no function keys above the number row. And yes, it would be nice to have a function key for adjusting brightness, adjusting volume, an escape key, things like that. But to be honest, the way it's laid out and how much space there is on the keyboard, it's impossible to have a function key. Sometimes my fingers already tap the bottom of the iPad when I'm typing, and with the size of the trackpad, the size of the keys, it is impossible to have a function key row. So I don't mind it too much, I'm used to it now, and I think the keyboard itself is incredible. Yes, the battery does drain faster using the Magic Keyboard than not using it. That's kind of expected because it draws power from the iPad to use with the backlights and the keys and the trackpad and all that kind of stuff. I've not seen major issues with it. I know some people have experienced terrible battery drain where it drains it within 2 or 3 hours. I've not seen that. I've just seen that it uses the battery up faster, but it's not the end of the world, especially in the current climate where we are at home more and working from home more. It's not too bad because I can just plug it in. But to be honest, I think if I was out all day, I think it would last me all day with general use, and I don't think it's a problem. One thing that I think is kind of crazy is that the iPad itself is half the weight of the iPad and the Magic Keyboard together. Yes, the Magic Keyboard doubles the weight of the iPad. It makes it a similar weight, if not slightly more, than the MacBook Pro of 2020. So if you put them together, obviously it's slightly thicker, and it is heavier. It's a bit of a chunky boy, but It has to be. As I said in my previous video, it has to be, because the weight of the iPad needs to be counted and that weight needs to be in the bottom. So it's just the way it works. Sturdy, and I think it's built really well. It's still really portable. You can fold it up, and if you don't want the weight, you can just take the iPad off. It's not an issue. Where else can you just take the screen off, use it, draw on it, and then stick it back on and get typing away? There's so many uses for this. So I think it's a little bit of give and take in terms of the weight. And finally, yes, it's expensive. The 12.9 inch model that I've got comes in at £349. It's expensive, but it is the best keyboard. I can easily say it's the best keyboard for iPad Pro. I've seen a lot of videos and comparisons on the Bridge Pro Plus for the iPad Pro, and all I've seen with that is problems and issues with connectivity, swipes not working, gestures not working. Because it uses Bluetooth, it's not quite as good as the Magic Keyboard. I'd pay extra for something that works perfect with the device you want it to work with. So I'd say go Magic Keyboard. It just works. It really does. Now, onto performance. The iPad Pro, I think we all know it's a bit of a beast. So the A12Z inside there, wow, it's impressive. There are comparisons out there which show that the performance and the power of the A12Z in the iPad Pro is better than 2020 MacBook Pros. It's incredible. It's amazing what Apple have been able to do, optimizing the software for the hardware. The A12Z blazes through anything I throw at it, and with 6 GB of RAM, there's no issues there with multitasking or any form of performance. And that's why I've retired my MacBook Pro for the iPad Pro Magic Keyboard. I edit all these YouTube videos on it. I do everything I need to do now on the iPad Pro in terms of productivity and watching videos, doing anything I need to do on this machine rather than that good old MacBook Pro. I can safely say it's my only computer moving forwards, and that is crazy. I never thought I'd say that about an iPad. There's been no hiccups, no lags, no stutters, and it just doesn't slow down on me. I guess Apple themselves proved how amazing the power in this thing truly is when at WWDC only last week they announced that they're moving all their Macs in future over to Apple Silicon. The transition will take a couple of years, and they've brought out a developer kit, and we're actually using that developer kit on the video running macOS. They were running macOS for MacBooks, iMacs, everything like that, using the A12Z chip in this iPad. It's incredible, it really is. And this year, later this year, they'll be bringing out the A14 and maybe even ones after that. You can only imagine how powerful those are going to be. The efficiency and the power that they get out of their own silicon is just beyond anything anyone else can currently compete with. And that's why I think that MacBooks, iPads, iPhones all working together in a couple of years, there'll be nothing to compete with it. Hopefully people can catch up, because we know competition makes everything better. But for right now, it's not looking good for the competition. They're dropping Intel, they're moving towards Apple Silicon, and they showed how powerful this chip was. It's just, in the iPad, you don't need anything else. The A12Z is just wonderful. The speakers are incredible. Wow, I didn't think they'd be this good, and I didn't really know what to expect, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Watching movies, watching anything on YouTube, and even these days using it for Zoom and video calls. Now when it comes to cameras, honestly, I've barely used the cameras on this. I've got a camera to use for that. I use my phone for pictures as well, but I don't use an iPad taking photos. I'm not that guy stood up with my iPad looking around using a massive viewfinder. That's not me. But if you are that person, there's a 12 megapixel wide lens, there's a 10 megapixel ultra wide lens, and a LiDAR scanner. They're great, they work like the iPhone 11, they're just as good. You won't really be able to tell a difference, and you'll be really pleased with them. The LiDAR scanner, the hardware is ahead of the software at the moment. When augmented reality becomes more of a thing down the line, I think the LiDAR scanner will be really useful. But right now, for me, I've barely used it, and I think it's more of a future feature rather than something to think about for now. I've used the Apple Pencil at times. I did use it a lot more before I got the Magic Keyboard. That's taken over a lot of things now. I used it for editing in LumaFusion. It was a really precise tool to use for that. But now I've got the keyboard and the trackpad. I don't use the pencil for that. But I do use it for drawing thumbnails and editing photos at times. I use this. And obviously just drawing when you fancy a little draw. I'm not the best at that though, so I'm not going to show anything. But it's a really precise tool. It's kind of found its home back on top of my iPad for now, and I leave it there until obviously you put it in a bag and then it just falls straight off onto the bottom of your bag. So yeah, it stays there until I try and take it somewhere and it'll just fall off. Now, to help me use my iPad as a computer and to get the most out of it, I actually bought a dongle, an adapter, same thing, the Hyperdrive USB-C Hub. Now this has been brilliant for me. It's got a full-sized SD card, a micro SD card, a USB-C port, a full-size USB port, a headphone jack, oh my god, in 2020 a headphone jack, and a full-sized HDMI port. This has been brilliant. It sticks straight in to the side of the iPad on the USB-C port, and it works really well with the Magic Keyboard and other keyboards from Apple, which I was actually quite concerned about. I didn't know if it'd be compatible with the Magic Keyboard, but it is, and it's just brilliant. It means I can put multiple devices from different sources into my iPad, connect things up, external displays. I can put a storage device in and an SD card in while I'm using the HDMI port to watch some sport on the TV. So there's so much you can do on this thing, but I think that if you're going to get one and you're using it as a computer, getting a dongle or an adapter of some sort so you can move things around. So it's really useful and really handy. It's not sponsored in any way, obviously, but I just think this is a great bit of kit to have, and I'll stick a link in the description if you fancy picking one up. Overall, as you can probably tell, I think the iPad Pro 2020 is incredible. If you have a 2018 iPad Pro, I would not upgrade to this. Don't upgrade, it's not worth it. But if you're getting an iPad Pro and you're choosing between a reduced price 2018 one and a 2021, I personally would get the 2021, makes it a bit more future-proof and things like that. But you couldn't really go wrong with either. It's one of my favorite pieces of tech over the last few years, and it's only going to get better and better. iPadOS 14 is coming later in the year. It was teased at WWDC, and features of that will be coming to the iPad Pro soon, which I'm very excited about. And for me, it's made me ditch my MacBook Pro. That's saying something. This is now my only computer. It'll be my only computer moving forwards, and I think that's crazy. I never thought I'd use an iPad as a computer, an only computer. It's just crazy. I think 90% of people could do the same thing. I think you could use an iPad and a Magic Keyboard, combine the two and use that as your only computer without an issue. Sometimes there might be specific software that you need to use that can't run on iPadOS, that iPad just doesn't support. Yes, I see that case, and I think that's what laptops and MacBooks are still there for. If you've got a specialized thing that you can't do on an iPad, you need the laptop or the MacBook. But for the majority of people, and for me, Apple were right. My next computer is an iPad. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, and let me know in the comments below what computer you're using. Have you got the iPad Pro? Have you got a 2018 or 2020? Do you want to get one? Have you tried out the keyboard? Let me know. That's all from me. I appreciate the support so far, and thanks for watching the whole of this video if you got this far. It's a bit of a long one. Catch you in the next one. Hey again, I'm back to say congratulations to the giveaway winner of the last video, which was Rupesh Singh. He goes by the name of @Rupesh_Maestro on Twitter, and he's won the LATERCASE for the OnePlus 8 Pro. So I'll get that sent out as soon as I can. I'll get in contact with you, get your details, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks to everyone that participated, and I'll catch you in the next one.